Are you Anthony?
Yeah.
I'm Trey.
How you doing?
How you doing? Good to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm on the campus of Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, meeting up with a guy named Anthony Cole. This building, the Drinko Library, also serves as a polling place.
This is going to be the place where they're going to have early voting, right here. So
Cole is one of a few million Americans who doesn't take voting for granted. Because, well, he can't.
you would not be able to come to a place like this, right?
I wouldn't be able to vote.
Yeah.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, this is Us and Them, the show where we tell stories about the things that divide us. I'm Trey Kay. In this episode, we put the spotlight on a group of people excluded from our elections by dozens of state laws across America.
You won't vote in this primary?
No, sir.
Can you tell me why you won't?
Because I'm a felon. I lost my voting rights.
They're called felon disenfranchisement laws, and they're different in every state.
It makes me feel like less of a citizen, like my voice isn't heard.
We're going to learn how and when a person like Anthony Cole in West Virginia can vote, who can and cannot vote in other states, and how these laws impact our democracy. Anthony Cole is 32. He's from here in Huntington. He just got out of prison in May 2023 after serving 12 and a half years for second-degree murder.
You know, I did something that you can't really take back, and they can't come back from that. You know what I'm saying? There's no way around that. But, I started life over. I'm living as a productive citizen. I work for the food bank. I'm trying to give back to the community at the same time, as well as feed myself.
Specifically this year, it's a presidential election. There's a lot at stake for the whole nation. How do you feel about not being able to vote this time?
Well, it does make me feel like less than, because I do like to stay informed on politics, and I do like to at least feel involved, like I'm back into society. I should be able to be a part of society. That's what our country is based off of. That's what our politics and our whole system is off of. It's supposed to be equality, and it really never has been, but it feels even less than now because my voice is completely silenced in that matter.
When will you potentially be able to vote?
The voting laws in West Virginia, I'm not actually 100% sure of the actual time frame, because I would honestly prefer to leave the state to get my rights back. Just the amount of money and the amount of time that I would have to wait, like it's just not worth it trying to get it back in West Virginia.
Cole has been told that to get his voting rights back, he'll have to get his record expunged. And to do that, he'll have to pay a lot of money.
What costs would that be?
Man, they're really expensive. I could look that up.
We both search our phones for a while, checking out different websites.
Hiring the attorney.
Anthony's information has come from people he knows who've recently gotten out of prison.
Ranging anywhere from a few $100s to $10,000.
But it's not lining up with what my producer and I have found through our research.
So the way we understand it is that in West Virginia, you should be able to vote after your parole is over.
I can vote in local elections.
Okay.
I don't think you can't vote in a presidential election.
Our research shows Anthony can vote in any election as soon as he gets off parole. But the laws are complicated. We're kind of nervous to tell him anything wrong and get his hopes up. So we sit here, Googling.
As far as voting rights, I'm not 100%.
What we're seeing across the country is really a sort of confusing patchwork of laws.
Sarah Carter is a legal fellow with the Brennan Center, a nonprofit dedicated to civil liberties and voting rights. It's her job to track nationwide trends in these state laws. She's not surprised to hear about Anthony Cole's confusion.
It can be very difficult for someone to know their rights.
Carter says in some states you can vote no matter what you've been convicted of. You can even vote from prison. On the other end of the spectrum, in Virginia, for example, you can only get your right to vote back directly from the governor.
And then in the middle, you'll find the remaining 47 states with laws of varying degrees of harshness.
What she means is, in some states, you get your right to vote back as soon as you get out of prison. In others, it's after you've finished parole or probation. But Carter says across the country, we're seeing a recent trend toward expanding voting rights.
In just the last 6 years, 14 states and D.C. have changed their laws to allow more people with past felony convictions to vote.
But some states are backpedaling. Carter says in Florida, voters passed an amendment to restore voting rights to most people with felonies. But then the state legislature created a law requiring that people pay all of their court fees first.
And this created an extremely confusing system in which many officials themselves in Florida aren't clear on which kinds of court debt would bar a person from voting.
Congress is considering a bill that would restore voting rights for all national elections, like presidential races.
The Democracy Restoration Act would allow people who are not currently incarcerated, so people on probation and parole, to vote in federal elections in every state across the country if it were to pass.
An estimated 4.6 million Americans cannot vote because of a felony conviction. Carter says only a quarter of those people are in prison.
The vast majority of these citizens are living in their community, like you or I.
And just like our criminal justice system more broadly, these laws do not impact every American equally.
Today, 1 in 19 Black adults are disenfranchised as a result of felonies, and almost 2% of the voting eligible population of Latino adults.
Carter says, contrary to stereotypes, this isn't always a partisan issue.
We've seen highly successful bipartisan rights restoration efforts in recent years.
4.6 million people. That's a lot of votes. If voting rights were restored to those people, how would that shift the outcome of elections? Who would those voices benefit if they were allowed to be heard? Carter says at a policy level, it shouldn't matter.
I think the impact on election outcomes is not entirely the point, right? Like, everyone should be able to have a say in who governs them, and everyone should be able to be represented, no matter how they choose to exercise that right when it comes to an election.
But on another level, it does matter, very much. Because as one researcher spent years demonstrating, these laws have a direct impact on who wins elections.
I work to understand both theoretically and in terms of the ballot box, the way that felon disenfranchisement changes voting outcomes.
Dr. Natalie D'Elia Deckard is an associate professor of criminology at the University of Windsor in Ontario, Canada.
There is absolutely no way to talk about voting rights in the United States without talking about the fact that the United States has the highest incarceration rate in not only the world, but in world history. We know, right, that incarceration is not sprinkled randomly through the society. It's not just that men are overwhelmingly more likely to have criminal records. It's that racialized men are more likely to have criminal records because of the ways in which we understand crime. It's also about poverty and class. It's poor men that go to jail, that go to prison. We absolutely know that class divisions very much predict voting divisions.
It's an old axiom that wealthy voters vote on the right, while poor voters lean left. That may be shifting in this country, but D'Elia Deckard says still people who are lower income usually rely on social services more and vote on the left. Upper-class people tend to vote on the right for policies they feel will protect their wealth. Recent Pew Research Center data shows white voters still make up more of the Republican Party's base, and black voters strongly prefer the Democratic Party.
When you take felon disenfranchisement laws into the mix, it is the people that are most likely to vote on the left who are not allowed to vote. And then the remaining voters, who are more likely to be on the conservative side of the spectrum, vote on what makes a felon.
A lot of Delia Deckard's research has focused on Florida, where almost 13% of voting-age black Americans cannot vote because of a felony. Her research shows the state is in what she calls an intentional cycle. Exclude more people with felony convictions from voting, and without those votes, lawmakers who win elections pass tougher laws that exclude more people from voting, and the cycle continues.
Simply, the Florida political system at present is dependent on the continued exclusion, right, of voters who are likely to vote for the left party. Statistically, it makes sense. But the fact that we see it in real life, that's stunning, especially when we still think of the United States as a democracy.
Disenfranchisement laws are nothing new. They date back at least to ancient Greece. But in the U.S., they can be traced to the end of slavery and the segregation-based Jim Crow laws that followed. In theory, black men could vote, but there were lots of ways to keep them from the polls.
Most felon disenfranchisement policies start in the immediate aftermath of poll taxes having to come to an end, and you see them gain the most steam in the aftermath of the civil rights movement. You need new ways to exclude people that are justified through behavior as opposed to identity.
Delia Deckard says these laws were the sequel to poll taxes and literacy tests, designed to exclude black voters. And while removing one vote might not matter to the outcome, removing a whole community from the equation does.
So when people like me are voters, we must be attended to because we are part of the electorate. We influence policy in a democracy. But if we as a community are systematically excluded, then we do not matter. We do not count. Felon disenfranchisement laws mean that impoverished men do not exist in the public space as subjects. The ramifications of that are endless.
Well, I do feel like even though I am just one vote, it would be to feel better to at least know that I contributed. But,
I'm back with Anthony Cole from Huntington, West Virginia. He does not think he can vote in this year's election.
At the end of the day, like, I feel like it's a lot of conservative politics that's really keeping felons from being able to vote.
Do you have any idea what they fear in your vote?
I don't know if it would necessarily be fear. I just feel like it's a continuation of punishment. I know I can get a passport.
We're looking up the state law to figure out when Cole can vote again.
So why don't you read to me what you're looking at here?
Can felons vote? Voting rights for convicted felons vary depending on the state of their residence and incarceration. In some states,
as a reminder, Cole has a felony record, served 12 and a half years in prison, and got out in May of 2023.
After you get off of parole.
Wait, to start that again? Say it again.
West Virginia is after you get off of parole. Vote restored after prison, parole, and probation. It shows the states here. It even lists them down the bottom.
So West Virginia is one of the states where your vote
After
is...
I get off of parole, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it's different than what I've been told for a very long time.
Anthony Cole thought he would need to have his criminal record expunged before he could legally vote. But that's not true. In West Virginia, a person with a felony can vote as soon as they finish their entire sentence, including probation or parole.
Now that we know this, I mean, how does that feel now that you have this information?
Oh, that's pretty cool. I would definitely love to vote in the upcoming election because I should be off of parole in May. Yeah, at least to be able to vote anytime I get the chance is always something that I feel like should be a responsibility as a citizen.
Have you voted before?
No, the last presidential election, when I was out, I wasn't 18 yet, was the 2008 election. And then by the time the 2012 election came around, I had been locked up. So I never had a chance.
Were you looking forward to, or were you planning on voting?
Oh, yeah. Obama? Oh, yeah. He was getting voted for immediately. Expeditiously. He'd have been voted for, yeah. I'd have been proud to do that.
After a break, we'll learn more about proposals on the table in West Virginia that could expand voting rights.
It's fine if the state legislature wants to change that and say, just once you're out of incarceration, then you can vote. That's fine if the legislature wants to do that. It's just they haven't chosen to do that.
If you are paying taxes and you cannot vote, that is absolutely taxation without representation.
And we'll hear from those who oppose a change in voting rights.
And we didn't take that right from them. They took it from themselves when they committed the heinous crime.
You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council, the Daywood Foundation, and the CRC Foundation.
Music lifts us up and brings us together, even when we can't get together in person. Mountain Stage brings you live performances on the air, online, and in our podcast. They remind you how it feels to be in a live audience listening to live music. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find a link to our stations and our podcast online at mountainstage.org.
Hey, it's Trey, and this is Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. We just left 32-year-old Anthony Cole sitting with the discovery that he may be able to vote in the November election for the first time in his life. As long as he successfully completes parole in May, his right to vote in West Virginia will be automatically restored. But there's been an effort in the state legislature to change the law, so someone like Cole could vote as soon as they're released. To learn what's going on, I meet up with the person who's in charge of elections across the whole state.
So it's a rainy night in Charleston, West Virginia. I'm waiting here at the campaign headquarters for Mac Warner.
How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Mac Warner is Secretary of State, and he's running for governor this year as a Republican.
Sure.
So could you share your perspective on the current state of voting rights for individuals with felony convictions in West Virginia?
Sure. State law clarifies all this, that if you've been convicted of a felony, which is a sentence of 1 year in jail or more, you've lost your right to vote while you're incarcerated, while you're undergoing the penalty for whatever that offense was. So once you have finished that time in prison, finished parole or probation, whatever, then you're free to come back on the rolls and vote.
You're also a candidate for governor. And you, as governor, you would want to represent all of the people of West Virginia. I mean, some would say that those people who are in that limbo period where they've done their time in prison, but yet they can't vote until their parole is over, that they feel disenfranchised. What would you say to that?
There's no limbo about it. Okay, you see, when you get paroled, you're not serving out the rest of your sentence. You've been given a sentence. And so because of your good behavior, because you have a job, because they want you to become a constructive or a citizen again, that's why they let you out on parole, to start proving your worth, or that you've, but that parole is still part of that sentence. And so again, it's fine if the state legislature wants to change that and say, just once you're out of incarceration, then you can vote. That's fine if the legislature wants to do that. It's just they haven't chosen to do that.
Another criticism that I've read is that West Virginia doesn't seem to do a good job to inform people who have been incarcerated upon release of what their rights are with regard to voting.
I would take exception to that. We've worked very closely with the ACLU and others. We put out booklets or pamphlets, information about this all the time. It's not a hidden secret or anything.
Why should a person lose their right to vote when they're incarcerated?
Because they have violated the state code. They have committed a criminal offense, and they have shown that they are not worthy at that time. They've done something to go against the people of the state of West Virginia. And so we wouldn't want people who are committing crimes to then be a part of a system that would allow them to vote for someone who may then decide to change and say these criminal offenses are okay. It serves as a deterrent value. So people know that they lose those rights when they commit an offense. And again, this is just part of the criminal justice system. We all want them to be a part of society again with voting rights, but we want them to serve their time for the crime that they committed. There is no effort to suppress votes or to keep somebody from voting. We encourage people to vote. I go out all the time to high schools and other places to encourage people to register to vote and to get out and vote. So I just disagree with the idea that somebody is trying to keep someone from voting.
Do you feel that the current law adequately represents and gives voice to people who have been incarcerated and who are finishing their sentence?
The law is very clear as to what the rules are for voting, and when you have taken yourself out of the legal system by committing a crime, then the legislature has decided that is part of the punishment, that you lose your right to vote if you have committed a felony offense and have been convicted of that. So it's very clear that that's what the situation or the status is. So again, if somebody feels that they are not being treated properly, go through the legislative process. See, I'm a firm believer in the legislative process.
There is a movement in West Virginia to restore voting rights immediately upon release from prison, regardless of parole status. A bill to make that law was introduced in 2023 by State Senator Bill Hamilton. That proposal died in committee. Senator Hamilton is a Republican, and he said if someone is employed and trying to get back into society, they should be able to vote. But not everyone in his party feels that way.
Yeah, my name's Mike Stewart. The last name's Stuart. I was the former U.S. attorney, most recently, for the Southern District of West Virginia. I currently serve in the state Senate, and I work hard trying to advance issues that are related to crime and reducing crime, combating crime, and protecting law enforcement.
Stewart, who's a Republican, is also running for state attorney general in West Virginia.
Could you share your perspective on the current state of voting rights for individuals with felony convictions who are here in West Virginia?
I know that we live in a period of time where there's a heavy emphasis on criminal rights. I support that too. We've got to make sure we treat folks humanely, that we try to be in the business of rehab and rehabilitation and treatment, especially when it comes to the drug scourge. But I'm focused on victims. I fully support the idea of the restoration of rights, but after you've served your entire penance to society. And that means not only your time behind bars, but your period of supervised release, if there's a period of probation. It's at the end of that entirety that you ought to get the restoration of rights. West Virginia already does this today. I just think I'm one of those folks that truly believe that there's a purpose to punishment. We don't do it to hurt people. We do it for the rehabilitation part. They're not part-time or lesser citizens because they don't have the right to vote. And we didn't take that right from them. They took it from themselves when they committed the heinous crime, whatever crime it happened to be.
Some argue that the people who are not permitted to vote are mostly low-income people of color. How do you ensure those people are not being excluded out of the voting process?
Well, listen, I don't think there's any intention that it be targeted to a specific race or class of individual. My argument here is that I don't care whether you're white or black or Asian American or any other demographic. You've committed a crime. You've been adjudged guilty of that crime. You've been sentenced to time behind bars and other penalties in addition to that, whether it's fines, probation, and until you pay that full penance, it doesn't matter your demographic. You need to pay it in full before you get a chance to vote. I think we spend too much time today with grave concerns about that criminal and that criminal and that criminal. And we need to spend more time focusing about justice for victims instead of rights for criminals. I think there's a balancing act to this entire thing. I'm not entirely unsympathetic to the idea of folks wanting to get back into the workforce. I believe in second chance and redemption. I just don't believe they're free.
We talk about other voter requirements, like voter ID laws. Stewart says he supports those.
Where freedom and democracy is based on the privilege of voting, I think the idea of saying that you have to have some form of identification is in any way a burdensome responsibility. I think it's part of the responsibility of citizenship. And we don't want to make citizenship so cheap, so easy, so unmeaningful that we get to the point of picking up your dry cleaning or your fast food at night and them saying, hey, do you want to vote tonight too?
So what you're saying is that yeah, there should be some hurdles that need to be cleared. You don't just get assigned a voter ID right from the jump. You actually need to register for it.
I think we're headed to a point in society where we say everybody automatically by birth is going to be assigned a voter ID, and as soon as they turn the age of 18, they get to vote. But I don't believe that serves our government or our citizens well at all. I think it's important you be an informed citizen. We have too many citizens today, and I understand it's hard to be a citizen, right? You're trying to raise your family, trying to put food on your table, trying to pay your mortgage. It's hard to have time to be able to focus on who are all these candidates. And so, but there needs to be some responsibility on citizens to say, listen, we're electing these people. I need to know who they are and what their records are. The idea of making this cheap and easy while you get your burger, you vote, doesn't make sense to me.
Stewart's argument here is that there's an onus on citizens to satisfy the responsibility of voting. It echoes something Secretary of State Mac Warner says about people who have committed felonies, that they've shown they're not worthy to vote at this time. And Warner says the purpose of parole is so you can start, quote, proving your worth. I want to bring back Dr. Natalie D'Elia-Deckard here, the researcher who studies voting rights, because she has some big concerns about arguments like this that qualify a person's right to vote.
I think that is one of the most stunning indictment of the ways in which felon disenfranchisement laws are the descendants of literacy tests, of poll taxes, and before that, ownership requirements. Simply, well, if you don't read and write well and you can't read the newspaper, how in the world could you vote? Well, if you can't even get the money together to pay a tax to help to fund all of this, how could you possibly vote? Why would we allow that? If you don't own land, then you have no real say, nor should you. That's just good common sense. Arguments around, you did this terrible thing, and so now you are not a full human being in a democracy, have really, really good company, right, historically in the United States.
It's like we don't belong to society anymore. Whenever you are somebody doing time or have had a substance use disorder and is viewed as an other. My name is Autumn McCraw, and I was born and raised here in wild and wonderful West Virginia. So on February 5th of 2018 was the last time that I was arrested. I didn't know it was the last time that I was going to get arrested, but I did know that I didn't want to continue suffering the consequences of being incarcerated.
During her years of drug use, Autumn McCraw spent more than 2.5 years in prison for felony convictions. After she was released from her most recent incarceration, she went to a recovery residence. Now she says she hasn't used drugs for over 6 years.
Are you legally allowed to vote?
Am I legally allowed to vote today? I am. So whenever I was released from parole, I was able to go get my voting rights back. So as soon as I was released, I went and applied for my voter's registration card.
The card arrived in the mail in 2019. McCraw grabbed it from the mailbox before catching a bus to go to work. She was a barista in a little cafe.
I opened the card whenever I was on my break because I knew what it was. And I held it in my hand and I just looked at it and I'm like, I have arrived. It was a really emotional moment for me. I cried because I felt like I belonged again, like I could contribute again, like this is my ticket back into the forefront of society and not just necessarily in the shadows or in the underbelly.
Could you show me your voter ID?
Absolutely. Come with me. I carry it everywhere I go. I even have it. What is this called whenever you put plastic around it again?
It's laminated.
Laminated. I laminated my voter's registration card.
Now, just out of curiosity, did you have that laminated or did it come laminated?
I laminated it. I thought I needed to protect it, right? It's something to protect. I wasn't able to have one for so long. I had to ensure that it stayed fresh.
Autumn McCraw will be able to vote for president this November. She's 40 years old, and this could be the first time she's successfully voted. She did fill out a ballot in 2008, but because of her felonies, she doesn't know if it counted.
I don't know, but I sure gave it a try.
So was that the only time you'd voted?
The only time that I could remember voting. I had a voter's registration card, but I don't think I ever used it.
And the face you're making means that that was the time that you were in active use and all that stuff is kind of out in the ether.
Yeah, absolutely. So, during that time, voting was like something old people do. Also, it was part of the narrative that my vote doesn't count.
Today, McCraw works to make sure others don't believe that. She wants people who have a felony record to believe their vote matters.
Seeing the light come on somebody's eyes that find that they have a voice is a really amazing experience. I remember when the fire was lit underneath of me, I get to see other people do that today.
McCraw supports an effort that would allow people to vote in West Virginia as soon as they exit prison. And she has a very, let's say, American argument.
Our country was founded on rebelling against taxes. And today, people are actively paying taxes that don't have a voice. If you are paying taxes and you cannot vote, that is absolutely taxation without representation.
Do you think that people who are incarcerated should be able to vote?
I think they absolutely should. Do I think that people would? I think that would be a huge systems change. But I do think the incarcerated should have a voice because there are people making decisions about us that don't know anything about what really happens during those processes.
Only 2 states and the District of Columbia allow people to vote while they're incarcerated on a felony conviction. There's no such proposal in West Virginia.
What do you think we lose when we keep everyone convicted of a felony from voting?
What do we lose when we keep everybody convicted of a felony from voting? They keep people from those glorious little moments of opening up their voter's registration card and feeling like they're part of again instead of feeling removed from things that matter.
But why should I care if you feel removed?
People that feel connected with society are going to contribute to society. We're going to show up. We're going to do the right things. We're going to want to help our communities. We're going to want to help other people. We're going to want to see the little old lady cross the street safely. And not only that, I see the people that are entering society again have more of a desire to help their communities.
There should always be redemption.
In West Virginia, black voters are disenfranchised at 3 times the rate of the general population. And black people are imprisoned at 3.5 times the rate of white people. Anthony Cole believes voices like his are needed in West Virginia and shouldn't be forgotten.
And I feel like to be able to have that redemption, to be able to bounce back and make myself a productive citizen of this country would only improve the country.
We checked back in with Anthony Cole after we interviewed him. He confirms he's up for parole in May, and if he successfully completes parole, he'll help decide the outcome of the 2024 election. You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this show was me, Trey Kay, Emily Havik, and Kate Smith.
Special thanks to Kenny Matthews, Lyda Shepard, Katanya Hart, Dustin Moore, and James Smith II. Michael Lipton, Tristan Lozow, and Ahmed Solomon wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, the Daywood Foundation, and the CRC Foundation. Hey, we'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode. Would you share them with us on our Facebook page or on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Us Them Podcast? Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the mentorship program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.